I know about it. I know about it. Notice that they were doctrinally sound. Their teaching was healthy. It says, you cannot bear those who are evil, verse 2, and you have tested those who say they're apostles and are not, and have found them liars. So they were able to test what they heard against the scriptures that they had, and they were able to root out false teaching. Those in Berea, Acts 17, verse 11, were more noble than those in Thessalonica, in that they searched the scriptures daily to see whether the things were so. We are to try every spirit. We are to compare what we hear with the Word of God and let the Word of God be the final say. Notice that they persevered and had not grown tired of serving the Lord. Verse 2, he says, I know your works, your labor, your patience. We made this point, but verse 3 says, you persevered and had patience and labored for my name's sake and have not become weary. Have you ever felt like you just can't go another step? I was talking to Brother Tom Holland. I said, how do you do it? You can't even walk. You're 87 years old. I was with him on his birthday, his last birthday. My wife and I went and visited with him. I said, you still preach. How do you do it? He said, I don't pray for tomorrow's strength. I pray for today's strength, one day at a time. And he said, Jesus gives us strength for the day, and we thank him for it. And then when another day comes, we say, Father, give us this day our daily bread, because we need strength that day also. Strength for our journey the Lord will provide. These people at Ephesus knew it. Now the second church would be Smyrna. Smyrna was filled with fake Jews. These are Jews that claimed to be religious Jews, but they were actually up to no good. They were evil. And they were severely persecuting the church at Smyrna. That's in chapter 2, verses 8 through 11. Severe persecution was coming. Notice verse 9. I know your works, your tribulation, your poverty, but you're rich. And I know the blasphemy of those who say they're Jews or not, but are a synagogue of Satan. Do not fear any of those things which you're about to suffer. Suffering really tests our character and our spiritual commitment. Some people, when they face suffering, they give up quickly. They want things religiously to always be easy and good. Jesus said, if you follow me, you take up a cross daily and follow me. Luke 9:23. These people were doing that. They were economically destitute. They were poor. And yet, Jesus said, though you're materially poor, I see that you're rich. You can be materially poor and rich in Christ, because that's true riches. They were spiritually rich in their service. They were wealthy in good works, like what Paul wrote in 1 Timothy 6:18. We move to the church at Pergamum. Pergamum was a place where they faced a lot of evil. Notice verse 13. I know your works, where you dwell, where Satan's throne is. He mentions this twice. Satan had set up a place of rule there, as it were. It was a place where evil was spewing forth in their city. And yet the church was there, holding fast the Lord's name. Jesus said, I know your works and where you dwell. I know that you're in the shadow of all this evil, and yet you are persevering. He saw their faith, and that it was firm. Notice he says, and you hold fast to my name, verse 13. And you did not deny my faith, even in the days in which Antipas was my faithful martyr and was killed among you, where Satan dwells. I hope we never face a day where the authorities come in here shooting people. I hope we never face that. These people faced it. One of their own brethren, Brother Antipas, died as a faithful martyr. And did they give up? Did they run away from their Christian duty? No, Jesus said, you did not deny my faith in the days, not just one day, but in the days which Antipas, my faithful martyr, was killed among you, where Satan dwells. Hopefully, Huntsville would not be looked at by Jesus as a city where Satan dwells. Maybe he does, I don't know. But we have a city in America that calls itself Sin City and bills it out as this is who we are. We're Sin City, Las Vegas. Well, there are other cities that may not brag about their sin, but they are proud of it. And it's no accident that some people refer to Huntsville and all of its excitement as Hunts Vegas. I don't know if you've heard that term. Some of the young people use that term. But Jesus said, in spite of this, in view of this, they were being faithful and did not deny his name. They were a courageous group, and we are to be courageous. The next group was Thyatira. Remember Lydia, seller of purple from Thyatira, same city. Thyatira, they let their love shine brightly through service. Their faith and their confidence was firm, and they endured tribulation. And Jesus gives them a letter, chapter 2, verses 18 through the rest of the chapter. Verse 19, I know your works. I know your love, your service, your faith, and your patience. And as for your works, the last are more than the first. These things that Jesus is mentioning don't look like a lot of things the world is looking for. The world is looking for excitement, for entertainment, and all kinds of new things in order to build up what they call a church. But Jesus is looking for things like works, love, service, faith, patience. And notice this, verse 19. And as for your works, the last are more than the first. So here we have spiritual growth. Their last works were better than their first works. Isn't that great? Sunday night, my class, in these next couple of weeks, are going to be looking at spiritual growth. We looked at it beginning last Sunday night. We can measure our spiritual growth. In fact, we are to measure our spiritual growth. Hopefully, we have grown since June 2nd of last year. Hopefully, we'll be further down the road of maturity this time next year, if the Lord wills. But we need to grow. These people had grown. Their latter works were greater than their first works. Some of the greatest works that are being done by old people. I think of Brother Holland sitting in a wheelchair preaching. That was remarkable to watch that man preach. When he came here for the singing, he stood up here with a cane. Come on. He held on to that table. But he could barely walk. But he kept serving. There's a young preacher, I don't know if you've heard about it, Don Blackwell, broke his back. His wife injured her back, but he is paralyzed from the waist down. This man served in the armed forces. He later became a preacher and has done a wonderful amount of work in his young days. But perhaps his greatest work may come from the wheelchair, because he's going to use his setback as an opportunity for God to work through him, and Don may do some of his greatest work that way. These people were enduring tribulation, and they were growing. Then the church at Sardis, opens chapter 3. Jesus gives no word of general praise for this church at Sardis. That's sad, isn't it? It's a commentary that this church at Sardis was struggling, and Jesus didn't find anything good to say about the whole church. But there is a bright spot here, and it's in verse 2. Be watchful and strengthen the things which remain. someone said, "I'm out of shape." And the doctor said, "You've got all the muscles you've ever had. Yes, you are out of shape. All your muscles have atrophied because of lack of exercise. But if you'll start exercising, you'll strengthen the muscles you have." And they have found this to be true. With older people, often therapy, that is exercise, can help them get strength. My wife fell and broke both her legs. And so what do? They put her in therapy right away. Not for her legs, but for her upper body. So she could use a wheelchair. And she became quite strong and used a wheelchair. And so strengthen the things which remain. It would not be wise for any preacher to come into this church with a lot of new programs and say, "This is what we're going to do, and everybody's going to be involved in all these programs." Would not be wise. First of all, we've got to strengthen the things that remain. Do the best we can where we are with what we have. In other words, bloom where you're planted. Take what we have and go from there. We have a point where we can start here, strengthen the things that remain. Jesus said to this church that they were ready to die. And their works were not perfect before God. Not complete. Well, you can say that's true about any church. We've not arrived. But we can strengthen the things that remain. And notice that there were a few precious souls that had remained pure. He says in verse 4, "You have a few names, even in Sardis." Must have been a wicked place. And the church had been affected in a negative way. But he says, "You have a few names, even in Sardis, who've not defiled their garments. And they shall walk with me in white, for they are worthy." Jesus knows what's going on in his church. And he knows the people in his church that are walking sincerely, genuinely, and to the best of their ability to serve him. Keeping the robes white in the blood of the Lamb. If you're one of those people, be that person. You're important to the church here. If you're not one of those persons and you let the world taint you and spot you, remember what James said in James 1:27? He said, "This is pure religion, undefiled before God and the Father, is this, to visit the fatherless and the widows in their affliction, and to keep himself unspotted from the world." So we can all do that. And that's important to the work of the local church. The example of the opposite of this would be Sodom and Gomorrah. Sodom and Gomorrah was destroyed because God could not find 10 righteous souls. If only 10 righteous souls, all those people would not have had to die. It may be that God is sparing Huntsville because of the righteous souls still living in this town. Or it could be that America is being spared because of the righteous souls that exist. But if we're not careful, we're going to have to apologize to Sodom and Gomorrah. We need people, regardless of how many are going the way of evil. We need people to follow the Lord. In the Old Testament we read, "Thou shalt not follow a multitude to do evil." Jesus said, "The broad way that leads to destruction, many are going in thereat. There are few taking the narrow way that leads to life." That's the way we need to go. Then there's the church at Philadelphia. Philadelphia, chapter 3, verses 7